as well as DS and MS relationships. She lives in beautiful Victoria, British Columbia, and enjoys using her talents to improve people's lives and relationships. And with that, we're going to say, welcome, Anke, and I'm going to turn to your slides that are up. And we're on the very first slide. And do you want to provide any introduction yourself right now?
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me on your program tonight. And I'm really excited to be on there. And unfortunately, I can't see the program. I can't see you guys, but I'm on the phone, so here we go. My presentation tonight is called Brains, Hormones, Sex, and Love, of interest to many people. And next slide, please, Bob.
Okay, you've got the next slide up.
So here we have the slide of a little baby boy and girl. And as some of you probably know, men and women are born with a couple of different sets of chromosomes, actually the same chromosomes, except for those coding for gender. Women have two X chromosomes, and when men have an X and a Y chromosome, that's why we have estrogen and progesterone. So basically, pretty much within the first few months of the conception, hormones are being output by the baby's body to affect the structure and development of the brain and body. And essentially, we know now that the differences between the sexes is pretty much almost entirely biochemically based and caused by our hormones, and that those hormones affect our brain function tremendously. They affect the way in which we perceive things, in which we process information. They affect our thoughts and emotions. And very importantly, and this is what we're going to be talking about a lot tonight, they affect the way each gender deals with stress. And the way the brain develops is really quite interesting. So the babies are already being programmed in utero in terms of different brain development. And then after they're born, in boys for the first 9 months for their lives, and in girls for the first 2 years of their lives, their brains are being based by very large amounts, relatively speaking, of testosterone and estrogen. In fact, little girls' brains are being based, the little girls' ovaries make much estrogen as an adult woman during that period of time. And this completely changes the way in which the brains are developing and wired. Next slide, please.
Okay, let me also ask people whether the change in the audio was helpful. Just put ones in the chat window if that helped. Did the audio change help you? I'm on slide number 3 now, Anke.
Okay. So men's brains are being pruned during the developmental phase, and a lot of circuits that have to do with emotion as well as language abilities actually get pruned out, and other areas become more active and actually grow larger than in female brains. So the action and aggression centers in males' brains are quite a bit larger than those in females' brains. And of interest to many of us, I'm sure, is that the male has a 2.5 times bigger sexual pursuit center than the female. Are also predominantly left-brained in terms of their brain activity. Overall, men make about 30 times more testosterone than women, and it's an extremely important hormone for so many different things. Next slide, please.
Hold on, coming up. You caught me. And you're on 4.
Okay, the women's brains. So women's brains are quite different due to the large amount of estrogen flooding the brain during the developmental period. There's 40% more connective tissue in the brain connecting the two hemispheres, actually. So there's 40% more connection, and the two hemispheres are very highly integrated. the observation and emotion centers in the brain are much more developed than in the male. And the female has language areas on both sides of the brain, which is quite interesting because males generally only have them on the left. Next slide, please.
Okay, go ahead.
So this slide here is pretty much the crux of the matter. If you haven't figured it out yet, the male brain is in blue, and the female brain is over here with the red. Yeah, are you laughing?
Yes.
So the women are laughing, okay? So this, basically, if we can understand this little thing here, we can understand our relationships and the difficulties we have between male-female relationships so much better. So the male brain, first of all, is organized much more front to back, and the two hemispheres are not very well connected at all. And the female brain, as you can see, everything goes everywhere. So the female brain has been compared to, a bunch of wires, a big ball of wires where every wire touches every other wire. Or also like a bowl of spaghetti where every noodle touches every other noodle. And that's essentially what happens in terms of brain activity in the female brain. And this is all due to the influence of estrogen. So everything in the female brain pretty much connects to everything else. Whereas in the males are much better able, male brains are much more able to compartmentalize, and men are famous for compartmentalizing. So the male brain essentially works like a bunch of boxes, or some people have said kind of like an apartment building. And you can see it's kind of like boxes here. So everything that's important to a man kind of has its own box. He's got a box for the car, and a box for the money, and a box for his job, and a box for his women, and a box for his children, and a box for his mother-in-law somewhere in the basement. and the important thing is that none of the boxes are allowed to touch. So if a man wants to discuss a certain topic, he pulls out a box, discusses only what's in that box, and very carefully puts it back afterwards, careful not to touch any of the other boxes. And men also have a very special box in their brains, which is actually a really large box, but it's completely empty. They call it the nothing box, and it's their favorite box. And that is actually where they go when they want to recharge. So when you ask the man, he's sitting on the sofa, he's not doing anything, you say, you're wondering about, and the woman asks him, what you thinking about? And he says, nothing. He's literally thinking about nothing. And we women, we can't understand it at all because in our brains everything is going everywhere. So the car is connected to the money, and the money is connected to our mother, and the mother is connected to our children, it's connected to him, it's connected to, our reflexologist, and everything is just connected to each other. And that's why men and women sometimes have difficulties communicating with each other because they don't understand these differences. It's as simple as that.
I have to tell you, Anke, that this has been an area of tremendous angst and upset within our relationship, and I'd simply attributed it to my Asperger's syndrome. But it's very reaffirming to hear what you're saying, and it's an absolutely fascinating conversation. So keep going.
Yeah, that's just it. You see, I became interested in all of this because I've always been interested in neurology, and I work mostly with children and who have developmental disorders, including Asperger's syndrome, ADHD, and so on. And of course, over the last 2 years, I've also become very interested in relationships, male-female relationships, DSMS relationships, and now everything is sort of just coming together with this new research coming out in brain science and gender science, that a lot of these difficulties are simply because male brains are male brains and females have female brains, and it's meant to be like that. There's nothing wrong with the female brain being the way it is, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with the male brain being the way it is. The male brain is designed for something else. Males are designed for action. We'll get into more of that in a minute. But basically, keep in mind, the hemispheres are separate. Everything is compartmentalized. It's meant to be like that. And the emotional centers are not as well developed. So let's go on to the next slide, and we'll clarify a little bit more as we go along.
You are now on slide 6.
Okay, so here we go. Testosterone, okay? Every man's favorite hormone, of course, and most of our women too here. We all love our testosterone. So testosterone is interesting stuff. It's released by anything that requires urgency and emergency. So popular hero, Superman, right here. Basically, this is the symbol of testosterone is action, profound action, immediate action, emergency, urgency as needed, direct action. And as well as it's also released by anything that involves sacrifice for a noble cause. And again, you have Superman there, right? Or let's say somebody who's going to war for their country, helping their family, their child. Anything to do with problem solving. Men's brains, because of the way they're designed, back to front, very compartmentalized, very, very good at problem solving. Their brains are designed for that. It's very straightforward. And it makes them feel good. So when a man solves a problem, testosterone is released, and the testosterone makes him feel good. And testosterone is also released by receiving appreciation and respect, which is interesting, especially in view of our lifestyle, and obviously by sex. Next slide, please.
You're on slide 7.
Okay. So how does a man rebuild testosterone? Now, this is very interesting. A man rebuilds his testosterone levels by resting and relaxing. And most of all, by temporarily at least forgetting about his problems. He basically goes to his nothing box in his brain, and this is all tied into the testosterone, and nothing happens. That's how he deals with stress. But he doesn't want to talk about it. And when a man makes testosterone, he experiences stress relief. This explains a lot of issues that men have with women and vice versa. For example, a man might like to tell a woman when she has problems, let's not talk about it, just forget about it. That's kind of the worst. That it means he's trying to give her his best advice, which works for him, is to just forget about it. You know, the man says, oh, all right, just let it go. Easy for him to say because his brain is wired totally differently than the woman's brain. Next slide. Slide, please.
You're on slide 8.
Okay. So a woman's hormone of pleasure is oxytocin. Oxytocin is released by good things like orgasm, breastfeeding. That releases massive amounts of oxytocin. Caring for other people, engaging in nurturing activities. Oxytocin basically translates as stress relief to women. And I remember when I was breastfeeding my daughter, how relaxing it was, and I'd often nod off afterwards together with her, and with the oxytocin kicking in. So how does a woman, next slide please.
Okay, just a minute. Let me see. Okay, you're on slide 9.
Yes. So oxytocin, men also make oxytocin and women also make testosterone, but those hormones are much less important to the opposite gender than the male hormones. So oxytocin is rebuilt by receiving nurturing interactions, receiving support, talking, sharing, romance, which is kind of like receiving something good, foreplay. And this is very important to understand because a woman runs out of oxytocin fairly quickly under stressful circumstances. When a woman experiences stress, her adrenal glands release cortisol, just like a man's do, but cortisol basically switches off these good hormones. Cortisol interferes with oxytocin production and also with testosterone production. And women in the modern world don't have enough opportunities to engage in oxytocin-building activities through receiving, nurturing, and receiving support. Next slide, please.
Okay, coming up, you are on
So here we have
10.
10, yes. So this is, you get the idea. An image says 1,000 words. This is learning how to make oxytocin quite nicely under these kinds of circumstances. Receiving attention, receiving affection, foreplay, intimate sharing. This is what she enjoys, and that's what her body enjoys. Next slide, please.
You're on slide 11.
Yeah. And now this is what a lot of couples experience. So here you have the man and the woman. He's happy to just lie there with his remote in his ear. And what he's doing is he's rebuilding his testosterone, right? And she is looking off into the distance, not looking all that happy, because she is looking for nurturing. She's looking to share her day. She's looking for some sort of oxytocin building activity and not getting it from him because his brain is wired completely differently and his hormonal system is designed completely differently than hers is. So he's just trying to do what his body needs to do, rebuild testosterone, because he's just used it all up during a stressful day. And she's used up all of her oxytocin. She's coming home, with more things to do and very little chance to rebuild her oxytocin. So that's where a lot of the disconnect between men and women happens. Interesting, eh?
Very, very interesting, actually. You're prompting me to approach you privately about asking you to do an introduction to my communications book that I'm about to reissue, but we won't take that up right now.
All right.
Moving on to slide 12. You're on slide 12.
Slide number 12. Okay. So for any of you who are interested in this, I highly recommend Dr. John Gray's work. You've probably heard of it, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Well, his latest book is called Venus on Fire, Mars on Ice. Hormonal Balance, the Key to Life, Love, and Energy. And this is where I got a lot of my information from tonight, as well as a bunch of other books and other things I've been reading. And essentially, what happens is that women become more and more angry, stay on fire, and the men withdraw more and more, so they go on ice because of the tension that is that not meeting their hormonal needs creates in their relationships. Make sense?
You're on slide 13.
Next slide. Okay. So to go back to women for a moment, women today suffer unprecedented stress levels. You can measure the stress hormone cortisol in the blood quite easily with a blood test. So women actually experience double the level of cortisol at work than men. And a lot of women's jobs require decision-making, organizing, things like this, which actually require testosterone. And that causes them to burn through their oxytocin much faster, and the cortisol levels are much higher than men. So their stress levels at work are double that of men. And when the woman comes home, the average woman who has children, when she comes home, her stress level increases even more. I remember when I had my clinic in Ontario in my younger years, and I worked there with, I had 4 staff and a bunch of other doctors there, and most of us had young children. We all said the same thing. We said, we go to work to get away from the stress. We knew when we came home, we had another full, second job to do that was even more stressful than going to work. And this is what happens to women. Now, over the last 20 years, it's been shown through research that the average woman's happiness has sunk like a stone, but men's happiness levels haven't changed all that much. And this is mostly because of this whole phenomenon with how women's bodies react to stress. And what's interesting also is research has shown that relationships are only as happy as the woman in the relationship. So this should give us something to think about. Next slide, please.
You are on slide 14.
Yes. So here we go. If a woman is suffering low oxytocin levels, she's probably going to be angry. And of course, women go through all sorts of other hormonal fluctuations, menopausal women, just in terms of their natural monthly cycle, where estrogen peaks and progesterone, estrogen drops, progesterone goes up. All of this plays into it as well. But one of the biggest factors is simply the oxytocin. Next slide, please. 14.
You're on slide 15.
I'm on 15, right. So Dr. Gray, in Dr. Gray's opinion, and he's been looking at relationships and all for 30 years, the greatest unmet challenge for women today is that they're not taking the opportunity to rebuild oxytocin levels by receiving nurturing support. This goes back to brain development. We talked earlier about how infants' brains, little girls' brains, are basically marinated in estrogen, in the first few years of life, especially the first couple of years. And research shows that even infant females pay more attention to each other, they pay more attention to people being upset, they make better eye contact, they talk a lot more, they generally have double the number of words in their vocabulary by the time they're 2 years old, they speak in complete sentences more, and they love to hang out with each other. And when the girl hits puberty, she encounters another huge wave of estrogen, which increases and grows the limbic center, the emotional centers and language centers in her brain even more. And if any of you have teenage daughters or know any teenage girls, you know that that's a pretty intense time in a teenage girl's life. Hormonal fluctuation, lots of drama, intense emotions, and they like nothing better than to gossip with their girlfriends, be on the phone for hours, be on Facebook for hours, and share secrets, talk about boys, prep and primp and so on. And what they're essentially doing is they're bonding with other females by talking and sharing and receiving support and so on, in order to have, biologically speaking, some, good support system in their adult years with other women. That's how women make most of the oxytocin, is through sharing and engaging in nurturing activities with other women. And that's what we're wired to do. And our modern life has basically reduced the opportunity for women to do this, because women are now in the workforce and they're not just sharing and talking and nurturing each other, but they have regular jobs. And then they come home to a house with maybe as a single mother, nobody else, or one man who is not a woman, obviously, and can't actually give her that kind of support to rebuild her oxytocin levels. And generally, most of the men don't know about this whole difference between the genders. So women's brains are prepped and wired for fairly intense, nurturing, ongoing, sharing, talking with other females predominantly, as well as with children. Because in all cultures around the world, women are the primary caregivers for children, especially when the children are very young. So talking and engaging and sharing with the child is very oxytocin producing. And this is the biggest problem I think, probably for relationships nowadays. And this is also where poly relationships and DS relationships, say with one dom and several slaves and so on, female slaves in this case, it can possibly meet some of these women's needs better. Because if you have sister submissive, say, and you sharing the dom or master, you're not going to make those kinds of demands on the male. You can share, you can get your oxytocin needs met to a large extent or to some extent from your other females in your life. And then the male has more time to rest and relax because you are happy doing, your housework and so on together. So I think this is where some of this, has more to offer in terms of our lifestyle, has more opportunities in some ways to give people what they need by providing these hormonal needs. Next slide, please.
This is really so interesting. This is just a fascinating presentation. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You're now on slide 16.
I'm on 16. So what about men and stress? Modern men are also under increased work stress. Life's getting faster all the time. A lot of men take their work home. There's more competition. They have to compete with women. Everything is much more expensive. I bought my first home, being 21 years old, for $80,000. It was a semi-detached home, 4 bedrooms. The mortgage was $500 a year. Incomes haven't risen that much over the last 20 years. And now here in Victoria, for example, a starter home, a basic start, like bare bones starter home, is at least $600,000. There's no way. I mean, the pressures on a man to provide that type of financial support are huge. Like they're so much bigger than they used to be. And there's so many other pressures on them. So now the women are working too, right? So the man comes home and he is expected to share the chores and childcare, but his body is actually not designed to do that. His body is designed to use up all the testosterone, doing something active, and then rebuild the testosterone. So what happens is, if the man doesn't get the downtime that he needs, doesn't get the cave time that he needs at home to rebuild his testosterone, he actually starts running out of testosterone. And he becomes tired, depressed, he can gain weight, he can lose his libido, his sex drive can go, way down. And it's basically not a very, very good situation for them at all. Now, secondly, and this is also huge for men, we're all exposed to large amounts of estrogen from our environment because of xenoestrogens from pesticides and plastics, and also estrogens from meat. Animals are routinely given estrogen to make them grow faster. Estrogen is a tissue-stimulating hormone. It makes things grow. And when you have too much estrogen as a female, for example, you can be more prone to things like uterine fibroids, endometriosis, potentially breast cancer. Estrogen is used in large amounts when a woman makes a baby. And it's used to promote growth in animals that we eat, like chickens, cows, etc. Maybe not too much in Canada, but I know it's common in the States. And as well, women are using a lot of contraceptive pills and other hormone replacement, and it's excreted to a large extent in the urine. So it ends up in the water supply to a certain extent. On top of this, if a woman is postmenopausal and is using a vaginal estrogen cream to help her maintain her vaginal health, her husband or partner can pick some of that up to his penis as well. Next thing, you have a man who's actually exposed to, who doesn't make enough testosterone, and additionally is being exposed to estrogen. And that's not good for him at all. Next slide, please.
You are on slide 17.
So then we end up with, the classic battle of the sexes. He's vegging out in front of the TV, like I mentioned earlier, and the woman is angry. The women are on fire, the men are on ice, and the whole conflict, to a large extent, is rooted in our biochemical differences. Next Next slide, please.
You are on slide. Sorry, you caught me mid-drink. You are on slide 18.
Thank you. So here we are. Common questions, few answers. Women ask, what's the big deal with the TV? Why is he more interested in the TV than in me? And why does it have to be a big screen TV? Now, this is something I've had personal experience with in one of my relationships, where my partner loved to watch TV, and I didn't really understand it at the time because I didn't know so much about this now. And it was actually something that I found quite hurtful in a way. I really did feel as if the TV was more important, especially on a couple of occasions when he didn't get off the sofa to greet me at the door, because he was watching TV. Now, the reason that men like to watch TV is because it helps them to go into their nothing box and it helps them to rebuild testosterone. And the bigger the TV, the more testosterone they make. That's why the men buy all those huge flat screen TVs, and that's why the TVs keep getting bigger, because the men buy them. They don't know why they like it so much. All they know is that it makes them feel good. And the men ask, why does she always want to talk about her day? Why does she want me to talk about mine? Well, the reason for that is that by talking about her day and sharing and so on, her body starts making oxytocin. She wants to be heard. She wants to release stress with talking. He makes oxytocin. He doesn't want to talk about his problems at all. He wants to make testosterone. He wants to be in his nothing box. Women ask, why does he always wait until the last minute to do things? And I've had experience with that, where I was waiting and waiting for things to happen, and they didn't happen until it was literally very last minute. In one scenario, a conversation that I was waiting to have ended up being scheduled for the hour immediately before my partner's surgery. As you can imagine, that didn't go over very well. But now, looking back and learning what I know now, I understand why. For the man to take action, his testosterone level has to build to a certain level. And by delaying action on something, he actually creates inadvertently a sense of emergency and urgency. And when it gets to the point that it can no longer be put off, the testosterone level is high enough for him to take action. Drives the women nuts. The man can't help it. For him, it's just that's how he feels. He can't even put his finger on it. It just goes by how he feels. And suddenly there's enough energy because the situation is becoming more urgent and pressing. It's the last minute now. That's when he can take action, especially if his testosterone levels are low because he's been under a lot of stress. So men ask, why does she get so upset over things? Why can't she just chill out? Well, this is interesting. The research has shown that women under moderate stress, all their various brain centers and emotional centers start firing like crazy. Moderate stress. Showing the male the same stimuli barely registers at all on these kinds of tests. You can hook them up to EEGs and things like that. Almost nothing happens. So the woman's brain is full on, noticing things and already throwing a bit of in a bit of an alarm state. The male's brain isn't registering, it's barely registering anything. And it's meant to be like that. It's not that it's good or bad either way. But what happens is the woman gets upset and then the man thinks something terrible is happening because he is responding to her. So he is actually the one overreacting, but he doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand that his brain works this way. And that's why the man may think, oh, this woman she's so emotional. She has extreme highs and lows. Not like that. It's just that his brain only registers something as needing attention, if it's very, very serious. And it's meant to be like that because the man needs to stay cool and in charge of the situation. You know, traditionally, the way we evolved, okay, the female has to and had to be more attuned to subtle alterations in their environment, for example, the health of her infant or children, and as well as to facial expression potentially in a bigger, larger, more potentially dangerous male. Whereas the males, who are always more one of protector, you know, their brain centers for example, protecting turf are much more developed. So the male doesn't need to pay attention so much to subtle hints and that are going on with infants, and needs to be more attuned to something more urgent and important in a sense that threatens the survival of his tribe, himself, his family, etc. That's why they only react when the situation is much more serious. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But for the woman, it may come across as he is being stone cold. He's not stone cold at all. He's just designed to, you know, to be an emergency man. He is designed to be the hero. He's designed to be Superman, to stay cool, calm, and collected, and still be able to take action to accomplish his goal, which may be to, you know, find food, shelter, to protect his family, to protect, you know, to save somebody's life. That's how his brain is designed.
Very just fascinating stuff, Anke.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want the next screen?
So, no, I'm not done. So
okay.
The woman asked, where did all the romance go? So at the beginning of the relationship, he's attentive, he's doing little things for her, he's taking her out, he's, you know, scening with her, you name it, right? And then after a while, the relationship settles in, and, you know, he's just sort of settling into things. The woman starts to feel taken for granted. But what actually happened is, the man was solving a problem when he was trying to get her to like him and have a relationship with him or marry him or whatever, or in any sort of committed situation. So he was solving this problem, and once he solved the problem, he may be going on to solving a different problem. Let's say they're married now, and he's solving the problem of how to pay the mortgage. See what I mean?
Yes, that is
it's
so
not the
true.
problem anymore.
Yeah.
That's problem.
Yep. I know of many cases. I've had cases where people have come to me for sort of consultation and advice, and that story is a repeating theme.
Oh, yeah.
Very interesting stuff. Go ahead.
Isn't it? And there are ways in which you can deal with that. So the man, on the other hand, says, why do I have to jump through hoops to have a sex life? So now he's in this relationship for a while, and, you know, he expects sex is part of the deal, isn't it? We both expect, men and women love sex. It's not that women love sex any less than men do. It's just that because of the way they're wired, they need to have oxytocin production to even lubricate. You know, so as a woman's oxytocin levels up, they're, for example, lubricate vaginally to get ready for sex. If the man doesn't, how can I put this, in a sense, touch her heart in such a way, or create some sense of romance or opportunity for her to share her feelings, she may not be interested in sex because her oxytocin level is in the basement. And that's why it may be more difficult for him to actually have sex. It comes down to something really simple, which is, you know, be nice to the girl and pay attention and so on. But the male has to understand that this being nice is crucial for the woman. And every little thing that the man does counts for 1 point. You know, so if he's nice, he unloads the dishwasher, that's 1 point. He brings her a flower, that's 1 point. She says something and he actually pays attention, it's 1 point. So all of those things add up, but they're only 1 point each. So it takes quite a few points to build that oxytocin level up to the point where the woman, in a sense, really wants to have sex, especially if it's in an ongoing relationship where maybe her needs haven't been able to be met for some time, or where she was expecting too many of her needs to be met by her male partner rather than getting them met somewhere else. Next slide, please.
You are on slide 19.
Thank you. So here's another interesting factor. Blood sugar levels have a lot to do with our hormonal balance, and that is something nobody understands. Not very many people understand, although I've seen this happen many times with my daughter and myself. Especially for women, steady blood sugar levels are needed to make serotonin, which of course is a major feel-good hormone in the brain, dopamine, etc. But if you eat sugar, you can get a blood sugar spike. When the blood sugar spikes, your body secretes insulin, get the blood sugar down, and to absorb the sugar from the blood into the cells. But if the blood sugar spikes, the insulin spikes too, and then all of a sudden, the blood sugar is too low again. Then as a result of that, the adrenal glands release cortisol. The cortisol wipes out the oxytocin and testosterone. And then, as a result of that, as well as dopamine. The men run out of dopamine, so he loses motivation, but his serotonin level is still all right, so he feels pretty good. But the woman runs out of serotonin, which makes her feel good, but she still has motivation because it doesn't affect her dopamine levels. So if the man and woman eat sugar, the male at the end of the day doesn't feel too bad, but he doesn't feel like doing anything, including being romantic or initiating something. Whereas the woman feels pretty crummy, but she's still full of motivation. Does you see where I'm going? So she's ready to tackle something, but she's not in a good mood. And she ends up tackling him.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and the average North American eats 150 pounds of sugar a year. That's up from about 10 pounds of sugar in the early 1910s, 1920s. 150 pounds of sugar a year. Next slide, please.
You are on slide 20.
Thank you. So one of the things that can help a relationship is to keep an eye on blood sugar levels. And by the way, blood sugar levels tend to fluctuate more as we get older. So what do we do about this? We definitely want to keep an eye on our refined carbs and not eat too many refined carbs and sugar, obviously. But there is a supplement that John Gray swears by, and I'm experimenting with it now. It's called PTX. You can buy it at most drugstores and health food stores. It was developed by some Canadian universities, and it's basically a fiber complex. You take this with your meals. It slows down the absorption of simple carbohydrates so that the blood sugar levels stay stable longer. And that not only helps with hormonal balance and therefore mood, but also with appetite, energy, and weight control, and it also improves sleep. And it's interesting stuff.
Yes.
Next slide. Yeah, next slide, please.
You're on 21.
Thank you. So, knowing what we learned so far, the question is, how can we help each other? Because ultimately, when you're in a relationship with somebody of the opposite gender, you love that person. You want them to be happy. You want to make them happy. We just don't know how half the time. So, knowing this information can help women to understand men's need for cave time, as well as to understand their need for respect and appreciation. Because all those things help them to make testosterone, which rejuvenates and regenerates them. And then they're able to give us women what we need too. And men can understand women's need for talking and especially being heard, because that helps the woman make oxytocin, and then she's in a much better mood, and so on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I've discovered in my last relationship. This is something I call confession. And what I discovered by accident was, this was also due to some other reading I was doing about sharing one's feelings and so on, was that if I simply shared how I felt with my partner at the time, I felt better almost immediately. So let's say something happened and I was feeling, let's say, sad about something. It was usually something that had something to do with him, something he did. And he had not greeted me at the door and that made me feel sad, let's say. If I said, can I give you a confession? And I would just, I do it on my knees, which was really extra special. I would say, okay, when this happened, I felt sad. And that would be it. Simple as that. Take almost 2 minutes. You wouldn't have to say anything. You wouldn't have to apologize. You didn't have to say anything. If you said, I hear that made you feel sad, even better. But it was hardly even necessary. Simply releasing that little bubble would suddenly flood me with feel-good hormones, and I felt as if there was no distance between us and as if I wanted to give him anything. And John Gray talks about something very similar to that in his book. He calls it Venus talks. And he suggests that in a relationship, the couple make time 3 times a week or so for about 10 minutes at a time, no longer than that, for a Venus talk, where he simply listens and she shares her thoughts, like what happened in the day, and especially how she felt about it. But none of that in a respectful way and not to do with the relationship, but just with her day and her experience of the day in her life. And then at the end, to tell him how much it meant to her and how much she appreciates it, and to thank her man for helping her, and how much of a difference that can make in couples' lives. So just wanted to throw that in. That's how we can help each other. Romance, little gestures count for a lot with a woman. People feel good, do something nice, say a nice thing. Next slide, please.
You're on slide 22.
We call that vent time.
Yes, we...
And there's a rule to vent time. Men don't fix it.
Right. Don't offer suggestions.
No fixing. Thank you.
Right.
That's very important. No fixing. It's just listening and acknowledging it. You don't want it to be fixed, otherwise you're going for the knife.
Right.
A little more about romance and passion, or call it connection, for women. Again, because of the differences in our brain functions, you can hook people up to all these different equipment and measure blood flow to the brain and how much things affect the brain. A compliment means 10 times more to a woman than it does to a man. Feeling ignored feels 10 times worse to a woman than it does for a man. Interesting, isn't it? So the whole idea of being cherished is huge for women. For men, on the other hand, criticism feels 10 times worse for the man than for the woman. Men are extremely sensitive to criticism. Just literally emasculate them. Overlooking a mistake, a man knows when he makes a mistake. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. For the most part, they know. And if she overlooks a mistake that he makes and doesn't point it out, it gives him 10 times the amount of pleasure that it would if he overlooked a mistake that she made. And that's all science, wiring people up to equipment, measuring their blood flow, measuring their EEGs, etc. So appreciation and respect is huge for a man. That gets his testosterone levels up. Slide, please.
You are on slide 23.
Thank you. So talking a little bit more about oxytocin-producing activities, women need to understand, we all need to understand, that a relationship is only can give us a small part, or should only give us maybe 10% of the joy and pleasure that we need to have in our life. The other 90% should be coming from somewhere else, other parts of our lives, other friendships, other relationships, hobbies, etc. But here are a few things that can help women create more oxytocin. And John Gray's book is great for that. He has a back page in there of 101 activities, and I stole just a few from him here. Getting a regular massage, singing loud in the shower or in a group, leisure shopping with a girlfriend. Don't take the man, take the girlfriend. Men hate shopping. Working out with a personal trainer, and I've had experience with that recently, where one of my friends took me to the gym several times for an hour to take me through all the equipment. I felt great. I felt like he was really taking care of me. I felt absolutely wonderful. Taking time to smell fragrant flowers, holding a baby, asking someone to carry something for you, helps you make oxytocin, volunteering to feed the hungry, caring for plants and animals. All those things can help women make more oxytocin, and they need to take that time to make oxytocin. Next slide, please.
You're on slide 24.
24? Sorry, I missed something here.
Did you
I think I missed something. Go back to slide 23, please.
You are on slide 23 again.
Okay. Sorry, I talked about oxytocin and it was showing needing a man. Okay. So one of the things that that's really important to a man is to feel needed. Again, remember the man is wired for action and to be Superman. So he actually needs to feel needed to make testosterone. And a lot of modern women, because we're independent, we have our own money, we can fix our own car, we basically give the man the message, oh, we have our own vibrator, we may be giving him the message that we don't need him. And to a man, that's actually emasculating. And it's very helpful for a woman to look at it in a different way and to essentially admit her needs for him and to share that with him. So this includes, admitting that she needs him for a romantic companionship, for regular sex, to share fun times, to feel special and loved, that she needs him for safety and support, and for emergencies, and that she needs him for support in her career. She can communicate that to him, and it will help both of them a great deal. It will help her make oxytocin, and it will help him to feel masculine and make testosterone. So someone I missed the slide earlier. So back on 24 now, which we already covered. Okay. We'll go to slide 25, please.
You're on 25.
25. Okay. So the ultimate hormone booster. It's not that, it's sleep. Sleep is in many ways the ultimate hormone booster. All of our hormones are also being rebuilt during sleep, especially growth hormone, as well as estrogen, testosterone, etc. And one of the problems with the modern day lifestyle is that we have so much stress that we don't sleep enough, or we have disturbed sleep. So getting our sleep in order and sleeping 9 hours a night, aiming for 9 hours, can actually help a tremendous amount with all of these hormonal issues and therefore with relationship problems. Next slide, please.
Whoops, wait. You're on slide 26.
Okay. So now I wanted to talk a little bit on a naturopathic position. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some supplements that can be helpful in helping to navigate all these hormonal and emotional challenges. And this is something I've discovered recently. I'm just going to touch briefly on all of these things because we are going to be running out of time. There's a great product called Empower Plus by a company called True Hope. It's a multivitamin mineral product, and it's especially rich in minerals, and the minerals are prepared in a very bioavailable form so that it's easy to take them up. And this particular product has been researched more than any other mineral supplement and micronutrient supplement in the world, and has been shown to be effective for anxiety, depression, ADD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, all sorts of things like that. This is a very good multivitamin to take for men and women, for anyone really nowadays. This is all I recommend now. It's such a good product. Now, for women, there are some other things that women can do to stabilize their mood and help them make oxytocin and dopamine. And one of them is a product called lithium orotate. It helps to stabilize moods and helps women to make more oxytocin. So again, we can provide certain nutrients through supplements, diet, and so on that can also help this whole process along. There are other supplements that can also help, including things like 5-HTP, L-theanine, which is a compound found in green tea, DHEA, and I'm just briefly touching on these things to let you know that it is available and possible. Next slide, please.
Okay, you were already speaking about 27, and that's been up, so I'm now on 28.
Oh, sorry, I missed something again. 28, okay. Number 28. Now, a lot of men actually are testosterone deficient because of these issues that we were discussing all night. So Dr. John Gray recommends this product called Tomcat Ali. Sounds a little like Tomcat Alley to me. But anyway, it's a good way to remember. It. Tomcat Alley. It's a product, I forget where it's being made now, in Thailand or somewhere, where it's very popular. It's made from a plant, and it's an all-natural herb that boosts testosterone, and it seems to be making a difference within 24 hours. So he swears by the stuff. If anyone is interested, go to his website. It's on the website, or you can also find it online. Tomcat Ali. Next slide, please.
You're on slide 29.
Okay. There's another product he raves about, which is called Myomin, and that can help men and women eliminate unhealthy estrogen from the environment, from their body. This is helpful for men. Now, men can convert testosterone to estrogen with the help of a certain enzyme that's called aromatase. Don't worry about remembering that one. And this plant inhibits this particular enzyme so that the male testosterone doesn't get converted to estrogen. If a man has relatively high levels of estrogen, it can very negatively affect his whole sexuality, and it, among other things, can cause prostate enlargement and contribute to prostatitis and all other prostate issues. And women don't want the toxic estrogens in their body either, so this is something that can help break down unwanted estrogen. Next slide, please.
You're on slide 30.
Thank you. Okay, so by understanding our different hormonal systems and the way our brains work, we essentially can help us have better relationships, we can have better sex, we can have better health, and a longer life. And thank you very much. That's what I have for tonight.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's see if we have any questions. Does anybody wish to ask any questions of Anke? Any hands up?
We have some thanks in the chat window.
Yes, in the chat window we have people thanking you very much. And
good.
Master Tandir was feeling poorly and left about 7 or 8 minutes ago. And so we thank you just so very much for coming on. And
well, I have a question.
Yes, Master.
So, sleep. So let's talk about sleep. I will say that I work really well on about 2 or 3 hours of sleep. Now, I'm not going to tell you my body works really well on that, but I feel fine. I feel refreshed, sharp. Everything's good, but I also notice that, you know, there's weight gain and things that go along with not sleeping. So, I, for the past 3 or 4 years, have been using a sleeping pill. I'm not thinking that while I'm getting my 6 hours of sleep, I'm not thinking that that's really helping me with memory, with weight, with all of the things that you're supposed to benefit from sleep. What would you say about sleeping pills and the need, how that works with the need for sleep?
Okay, what I was talking about tonight is all very generalized. Individuals vary, of course. Everybody has their own unique system. So some people do perfectly fine on even 1 hour of sleep. Some people need a lot more sleep. So there are a great deal of individual variations. If you're functioning fine on 3 or 4 hours of sleep, then that's fine for you. You may not need a sleeping pill. If there's weight gain or other issues, it may be related to other things like increased cortisol levels or other hormonal imbalances, thyroid abnormalities. It may have nothing to do with your sleep.
That's a good point. To look into a hormone reason that the sleep has become apparently less needed.
Jen, I'm sorry, I can't hear you well at all. Can you get closer to the...
Oh, I was saying that I may wish to look into a hormone reason why the sleep my body doesn't seem to need more sleep. However, I'm having all of the symptoms that come from not getting enough sleep.
Well, I would probably have to assess you individually to give you a good answer. So I'm not quite sure what to tell you.
I was just saying more in general of what do you think of sleeping pills for if sleep is necessary for us, what do you think of sleeping pills? Is that a good way to get sleep?
It's probably not the best way to get sleep, but at the end of the day, you may need the sleep. Everything in life is a trade-off, right? The benefits of the sleeping pill may be better than not getting enough sleep in your case, may outweigh any sort of risk. There's a lot to be said for trying to get sleep in a natural way. And, people certainly use things like melatonin and L-theanine, grounding mats, relaxation, CDs, and so on. There's all sorts of other things that people can do. I feel for you, I have a chronic insomnia problem myself, and I've taken medication for it for years. I cannot really function without it. So in my case, it's probably not the best thing for me, but I do need my sleep.
Right. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Anke, for the session tonight, and I really want to congratulate you on your flexibility and your aplomb, your ability to recover from what was a near-fatal technological glitch. And
yes, thank you.
Is it convenient for me to call you tomorrow at some time?
Oh, yes, certainly. Let me see.
We have 3 hours of time difference between us.
Right.
Or you can also send me an email giving me some time parameters.
Okay. I'm free at 4 o'clock my time tomorrow.
7 p.m.
Before you go, we'll type it into the chat box.
You can reach me on FetLife under Amara Z.
Do it again.
It's Amara_Z on Fet.
All right.
Or they can reach me via email at drzimmermann@shaw.ca.
At Shaw, S-H-A-W?
That's right, .ca.
.ca. That's Shaw Island. Dr. Zimmermann at Shaw CA. I've typed that in. Whoops, let me get that to everybody. Hold on just a minute. I just typed it to one person.
I also have a website, but it's all, just naturopathic stuff.
Okay. That's actually very interesting that you're using the internet from Shaw. My first family lives on Orcas.
That's all right.
So I'm very familiar with Shaw Island.
Well, Shaw is the cable provider here.
Okay. Well, very well. All right. Well, thanks very much again for coming on, and I will I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Thank you so much.
Marvelous.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody, I'm going to hang up the phone here from Anke. And thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. HypnoFun and Cokes and Mike and Paula and Nikita and Ursula. Really appreciate it. And
Nikita and Ursula, Bob will speak with you
I
Saturday.
will be on with you on, is it Saturday that I'm on?
Saturday?
Saturday?
Well, I'm at the baby shower.
Well, she's at the baby shower. I remember all of this, and Master will make sure that I remember all of it. Talk to you all soon.
Good night.
Hugs and kisses.
We're
dark in 2 weeks. So we come back again on December 8th, the second Tuesday of December. And we are having a person that's local to us here. His name is Stitch. And he's going to be talking on a topic, let me see, can you do that?
The loving dominant, that just ain't me.
Okay, there you go. Hope to see you then. Talk to you in a bit. Thanks for joining us. Night-night.